Welcome back, everyone. Right, it's time to talk about Diablo 4, because this is a strange situation where, in many ways, you have an extremely strong showing from the Diablo 4 team, along with a fairly damn solid release window. But obviously, this is happening in the backdrop of Diablo Immortal. And it's a funny little situation, because while we have not seen Blizzard directly engage with the Immortal discourse, we have seen them feel the need to reiterate certain points. So they feel the pinch. I think they're evidently not exactly allowed to talk about the very obvious elephant in the room, which I think if you're a Diablo 4 person, developer, whatever, you're probably now in a really strange situation where the game that all your friends made is now having the result of a lot of default doomerism on the game that you've made. How do they deal with that? It must be a very awkward situation.
Yeah, because now you've got the axe hanging over your head of, oh, Diablo 4. Oh, yes, that's the same franchise as same franchise and developer as literally the lowest user score on Metacritic right now. Fantastic.
Yeah, and in a world...
Reforged is second.
I love that. And of course, this is in a world where it is confirmed that this game is going to have a cash shop.
Of course it is.
Now, that said, they've also said that it's a game that's going to have seemingly significantly more robust content updates. So it seems like they're trying to make this in the same way that Overwatch 2 is supposed to just exist there as a live game that keeps on getting updates. I think, unlike Overwatch 1 with its cadence, it seems like D4 is going to be that as well. And so they want some form of recurring revenue to support that development, but they have evidently been struggling to communicate that as a potential good thing, given that basically people don't trust them with Immortal. It's even little things. The post from Wyatt Cheng that said you can't buy gear. And it's like, he's right, you can't buy gear. Gems increase your combat rating too, though, don't they, man? So people feel like they've been, in essence, by the spirit of the truth, lied to. So, let's just get into it. Diablo 4 has had its release window announced, right? They've also revealed the Necromancer. And they did so, and I think a cinematic that was pretty damn awesome.
Yep,
a cinematic that is continuing to drive home something that was a bit disappointing about Diablo 3. That was that they really toned back a lot of the darkness with D3. D4, with the environments they're showing, all of this stuff, they're obviously going way more into the darkness. So I think for what the core Diablo fans want, especially the people who are currently enjoying Diablo 2 Resurrected, this is kind of what they want. So what they've said, though, is, let's talk about some game features, some specifics. So it is coming out on PC, the Xbox One, the PS4, Series X, Series S, PS5, cross-play and cross-progression for all those platforms. I think this is undoubtedly a really good thing. Diablo is super fun on a gamepad. It's also super fun on a mouse and keyboard. No reason why they can't coexist.
Absolutely.
Of course, it being next-gen from the launch makes complete sense, because now next-gen is current-gen. And obviously no mobile version, because, I mean, just look at it. Shit ain't happening.
Yeah, good luck.
So they've got closed beta signups there, and they have, announced 2023.
Yeah,
and
because
I suppose would we expect half one of 2023?
So
Does
that's
that fall within 12 months?
That's what it's targeting, right? So the way it was announced was very much everything that the Xbox Showcase showed off was targeted within the next 12 months. And that means that Diablo 4 at the latest it could currently be without any changes is definitely then June 12th, 2023. Same with basically every other game they showed there. So it is obviously is a case of, well, they can target that.
Right. Well, if I make it to 29,
yeah,
I'll have Diablo to play.
Yeah. So that's the thing. They could very easily say, oh no, we actually need to delay this again. Because I think a lot of studios have kind of learned that delaying isn't really a bad thing if you definitely need it. It's like you kind of get a lot of free wins with it as well, PR-wise and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally.
So I definitely wouldn't, would I put money on it? Probably a little bit. Probably.
All right. So 5 classes, notably no Crusader or Paladin style class. Yeah. Of course, that is in Immortal. That is in D3. Who knows? Maybe that will happen post-launch. It's a pretty different Diablo. It feels like it's a Diablo that's now existing in a world that has a Lost Ark, in that it does seem to be more of a big, expansive world experience, almost with a pseudo-MMO layer, as they've tried to do with Immortal as well, and some would say quite successfully.
Yeah, that's basically the way the wind is entirely blowing. And to be fair to them, it's like obviously this game has been in development for a long time. It's been rebooted a couple times. So the fact that they're kind of sticking on top of, hey, this game has been in development for a long time, but we're not releasing a game that should have existed when we first started making it, as that was like a pretty big problem in the industry before. They'd like start a game, and by the time the game was finished, it was out of date. So they seem to very much be avoiding this conceptually, because it has all of the live service game elements. Because I think it was, as Connor was saying to me earlier, the entire game industry that Diablo 3 was released in doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It is a completely different market. It's a completely different industry. Everything from expectations from the bottom to the top are completely different.
And compare seasonal D3 right now to seasonal PoE.
It is just literally unfair to even consider them in the same league.
Yep. And that's not really the fault of the D3 developers. It's just that's what they've been given.
Well, obviously they got, they got basically the ass torn out of any plans they had to continue making the game en masse. As far as we're aware.
Of course, rumors that we got basically said that, hey, everyone was primed to do a second expansion to Diablo 3 because Reaper of Souls basically saved the project, but the Blizzard higher-ups essentially just believed, nah, D3, DOA, we need to move on to the next thing.
So hopefully they actually are willing to support this from the get-go.
I think so. I think that, like with Overwatch 2, they are building this out to be a proper decade-long game. I think that's why they're doing that. They're obviously doing that business model because they want to earn money, but I think also they understand that they're in a world where PoE exists. Look at all the money people spend in cosmetics for PoE.
Yeah.
Was it Preach saying he spent... Was it Preach? I don't want to mess it up, but somebody anyway was saying like they spent like 500 or something on PoE. Maybe it wasn't Preach, actually. I don't know. But basically, they felt fine and happy to pay that in PoE because it essentially felt more fair and like they were not being hoodwinked for the money, unlike in Immortal. To go to things for this game then, I mean, right, character customization. At least for a Diablo game, looked pretty damn good. Way more than we'd be used to. Then, they say 140 dungeons, dozens of side quests in this big open world. When you actually go through what that open world looks like, I've got to say, it is goddamn gorgeous.
Yeah.
What they're able to pull off, even that time, there's a character just like walking, there's like a little hole in the wall, you see a big city, like the scale is super impressive. Even from that shot of is it like the sort of barbarian character like doing a jump, like off a ledge, like there's just seemingly a level of riches and detail in the world that wasn't there before. We've got world bosses that are for teams of players to fight, and then also, as you are progressing through the world, the like corrupted areas, you can basically free them, then they're a friendly outpost. So I think they're really trying to just make that experience of going through the world for a long time super fun. And on that, they're saying there's no golden path to follow. You can basically progress non-linearly. Pretty open-ended experience that extends into the end game, where they've got nightmare dungeons, whatever those are, and a dedicated PvP zone. Building Paragon boards to continue advancing and customizing characters beyond max level, and then something called the Tree of Whispers to unlock further world objectives and bounties and acquire legendary gear.
Yeah, so I think the first thing you kind of immediately, especially because I haven't really played a whole much of Diablo outside of Diablo 3, right? And immediately seeing Paragon boards and seeing what they have for skill trees, you're like, oh, okay. You look to be kind of understanding that PoE has really catered to loads of players in terms of the customization depth, the kind of actual skill depth you can have and build depth and variety. And they seem to be doing that in a substantially, how do I put this? A less extremely accessible form. Because for D3, it was really, really quite simple in terms of builds. You had your like legendary and sets and your gems. And that was kind of the height of it a little bit.
And with skills, even
Obviously,
there was a bit of a
skill builds
drama
and
with the
runes,
way that they had done those initially.
Yeah, exactly. And then they kind of freed that up over time. But it's like for D4, it looks like they actually know who they have to fight. And they have to fight on at least similar enough terms. At least at first glance. Obviously, who knows what that could be. And by the time this game is out, PoE 2 might be out. That kind of stuff. Maybe, likely not. But, that's been announced 4 years ago or so. So, no, 3 years ago now. So, it's definitely, they have to actually fight with, I mean, what other ARPGs were around when Diablo 3 was kind of launched?
Torchlight. It was like Torchlight 2.
Torchlight, like Titan Quest, which is a good game, but wasn't a Diablo. So now they have real competition in this market, and they seem to know it, which is good.
They do. At least like when I was looking at this trailer, for the fundamentals of what captures your imagination with the trailer, it's just the scale, the darkness, it's grim and bleak. That is exactly what I want from Diablo. It is a very welcome departure. As much as I did actually like lots of D3, it's a departure away from that. And yeah, just look, honestly, for me, especially like this sort of environment, I just think it looks incredible. I think the combat looks super visceral. Yeah, I thought it was an extremely strong showing, but do people trust them? So there are just a few other points from them that we're going to talk about so you understand what the game is before we really dive into things. So they're, of course, saying it's a love letter to their fans, talking about really focusing on returning to the darkness. Essentially, going away from the D3 direction has been an active marketing point that they themselves have engaged in. We're looking at a 35-hour-long campaign that is brimming with stories and characters that are really human that you connect with on an emotional level, which I do have a degree of suspicion over. I feel like they need to upgrade how they tell stories. As an example, if an NPC is talking to me while I'm running to an objective in a game like this, that's like fine, it feels pretty good. But in Immortal, when it's just standing there barking lines at each other, it feels way out of date. So I want to see how they actually kind of bring that up to snuff. Player customization, talking a little bit about that, creating your backstory, depth of skills. They're saying the story's non-linear. Again, I'm interested in how they can do that. They're talking about a shared open world. Again, I'm kind of interested in what that experience could end up being or end up feeling like. There are certainly times when you're playing Immortal that, you're just gallivanting about the world, and it is kind of cool that there's other players there.
Yeah, I think for the non-linear open world stuff, I feel like the ideal version of that is probably to grant that Elden Ring kind of feel, where you aren't really like told to go anywhere. You kind of are roughly free to kind of explore and stuff.
That's what I'd like.
But as to whether they'll actually get that, or it'll be, because obviously Diablo is a very gameplay focused game, which means you're liable to have a load of quests pointing in different directions or a load of gameplay markers to go, oh, here, explore this area, and it's like a kind of combat room kind of thing. So as to whether they can get the exploration part of that, the fantasy part of that down, is kind of, you would hope so because of the team size and stuff and the focus. But it's like, will this be a Diablo game over an RPG? It's kind of the thing I think is maybe worth thinking about.
Yeah. On the dungeons end, they're trying to talk up essentially the ways they can make them feel unique and different. So it essentially just seems like they've made a lot of different tile sets for these dungeons. Which, you got to do that. They're talking about when a dungeon rolls, it is randomly generated within those parameters. So you'll see differently configured mobs, different champions. You're going to see different affixes and a different layout for the dungeon. Then on top of that, dungeons will have objectives. So it could be to kill a boss, could be to, find 3 things or whatever. And so they're trying to talk up how that stuff feels unique. I think we will have to wait and see. Yeah. Generally, the procedural stuff doesn't end up feeling that unique to me. I mean, it certainly did in Diablo 3. But also, I don't think it did to many people, and that ended up not being a humongous problem.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more a problem for, I guess, more exploratory players.
Yeah.
Who kind of, as soon as you do the same thing 3 times, you're like, wait, is this the game? Am I doing the same thing? Especially at the early stages of grinding, where the game, kind of opens up a little bit more strategically and build-wise later on. So it is just a massive grind versus the likes of PoE and Lost Ark that have substantially more interesting content. Obviously, a lot of the comparison will have to be with Diablo 3, which is a very, very old game. But it is a case of, will they learn enough from that to have bespoke, unique content?
Yeah.
Or will they do to be quite frank, the World of Warcraft thing of get your systems that make the numbers go up in a nice curve, make that do all the heavy lifting?
Given that they're talking about a 35-hour campaign, I very much hope that there is going to be, in addition to the grindy ARPG bit, like what I think as experience-driven players we'd actually want. They're talking about local events then. Basically, they're occurring in the world over time, so basically you can get sidetracked. Now, I kind of like what they say here. Oh, I see a dungeon on the map. Oh, I see a shared event coming up. Oh, wow, a world boss is about to appear. Let's go do all of that. I want the gear. Or even then small things like, oh, there's a treasure golem that's now going to drag me halfway across the world because I try to chase them down and hopefully get a legendary item. Now, if they can tap into one of the things I've enjoyed about Guild Wars 2, which is you do a renown heart, then a world event spawns, so you do the event, you succeed in the event, it then chains into 2 or 3 other events, and it kind of feels like a little adventure that's happened. If they do that, then I think that's really good. And they're also sort of talking about the idea of these strongholds that you then clear out. that is going to unlock more sort of content and stuff. Certainly, that's all stuff that for the like new players experience, maybe the first 50 hours completing the map, feeling a sense of progression there, should be pretty decent.
Yeah.
Now for their PvE, PvP systems are just a few comments they've provided. So there's Fields of Hatred. Basically, when you go there, you can be attacked by somebody else and also monsters. So some PvEVP. All right, could be pretty sweet. I think the type of game like Diablo is actually super well suited to highly engaging, like high APM, very fun combat. Like, obviously very different in terms of design, but you can get similar enough to some of the things you could see in like a MOBA or something, right?
Yeah,
like that could end up being quite good. They're talking about how you're also getting, when you're in those PvP zones, shards of hatred, which is like a currency that then get handed in for the unique PvP items, cosmetic armor sets, that kind of thing. So they're talking it up. It's also entirely optional. To me, sounds pretty good. Another thing then is endgame, right? So I feel like this is sort of game where they're going to be designing with endgame in mind quite a lot more from the outset. They obviously did plenty with 3, but I think content and experience-wise. So you can upgrade dungeons with sigils to make them nightmare dungeons. Is that a bit like basically putting skulls in when you're playing Halo?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems to be the kind of Mythic Plus from World of Warcraft of you do this on a harder thing, and then it'll have more affixes, and then you keep going up and get more gear, that kind of...
Yeah.
Just that continual... We'll add a couple zeros onto this kind of loop.
With the gameplay pacing of Diablo, I think I would prefer and enjoy this significantly more in Diablo than in Warcraft.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It is basically just, Rift dungeons in a way. I imagine mostly the same situation. Although hopefully the dungeons would have substantially more bespoke mechanics. Because I think that's the one thing that gets me whenever I'm playing Diablo, and it's like, it is all sludge for so long.
Yes.
Because of the lack of actually interesting, unique mechanics that actually occur when you're playing the game.
So with these sigils then, basically, there's loads of them and loads of different affixes. If you get one for a dungeon and you don't think it's well suited to your class, you can just skip it and do a different one. So the idea of swapping out your little keystone, certainly to a World of Warcraft player, they're looking at this and thinking, wish we could do that in a little bit more of a liberal fashion than the current system. Right, so the Nightmare Dungeons are kind of like running a Rift, but they're saying that they have a sense of place. Right, so that also means that a dungeon might have a particular type of loot, something like that. So I suppose that's existing for just a little bit more targeting.
Yeah, I think that's the case where they're maybe just actually trying to apply some meaning to their content. Because obviously with Rifts, and you go into that through a portal in the town, it doesn't mean anything. It's like, sure, it's fine for the gameplay-oriented player, it's fine for the kind of demon who will just run, like, whatever, how many of those they can muster in one day, and constantly like that kind of dopamine rush of loot. But for people who want a little bit more of the meaningful exploration of, where am I going? A Rift, it doesn't mean anything, versus, I'm going to the dungeon.
Yeah.
So there's like that contextual link in your head that makes it feel like it's real. I think they realize they really need to get that right, which they kind of haven't really done before.
Yeah, absolutely. For more of the endgame then, they basically just said that Diablo 3 didn't have an endgame. Obviously it did. You're just rerunning campaign chapters and stuff like that on the harder difficulties to get better gear, etc. But here they're just saying, no, we've put a lot of effort into a good endgame from launch. So when you finish the campaign, you might be like level 45. Your character level goes up through 100 Paragon points. You get access to the Whisper system, Nightmare Dungeons, and other endgame activities they're still working on. They basically want a whole bunch of the game to open up at max level. They then talk about world tiers that basically allow you to step things up so that the world actually feels appropriate for your character.
Yep.
Which, again, then will mean that any of the content that they place within the world can scale up meaningfully as well, which, I mean, to be honest, is kind of what we would expect.
Yeah, though it does... Well, I suppose it depends on how much of this is like actually optional versus not. Because you do have that continual problem of if everything scales to your power, then your power feels meaningless. If you're not actually killing stuff faster, if everything's health goes up the same way your damage is going up, then it's just a treadmill. As opposed to a treadmill where, you come back the next day, you run a bit faster. But in this, the treadmill will keep up. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, they have to balance it right, but equally,
Yeah.
it's weird. This is a genre where people sign up for a treadmill, man.
Yeah, it's just...
I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm sure there are ways to make the treadmill feel a bit more interesting than the kind of flat scaling. So I think
Yeah.
you see that in a lot of games where it's just the scaling is so flat that you never feel anything more than the same kind of pace forever.
I guess what's interesting to me is that what so many people enjoy is running seasonal characters.
Yeah.
Right, where like in a PoE, a new season will have a new mechanic or something like that, the seasonal leaderboard. They haven't really talked about that sort of thing with D4. You know, they almost talk about it as if it is this like ARPG MMO hybrid sort of game experience. Hard to know. I'm definitely okay for them not positioning this exactly the same as PoE. Like perhaps they understand that PoE, like it has its people, and maybe they can't beat it at its own game. Hard to say. As for the release date, well, they're confident in 2023. That's what Rod Ferguson said.
Yeah, that's the thing that's weird where I'm like, first half 2023 is a bit interesting because they said, games targeted first half 2023, but every time actually mentioned it's, will this release in 2023? Like, yeah. So it might be later in the year, but hard to know. Hard to say.
Let's talk about money.
Yep.
I think you want to talk about money.
Yeah.
I think that's what really people give a shit about.
Yeah, because that's the thing. It doesn't matter how good Diablo 4 looks. Doesn't matter how good it is. Doesn't even matter, closed beta comes out, people really enjoy it. People are not, I don't want to say afraid. They're suspicious. They're defensive. They've got their guard up.
Yeah.
Because they know that Blizzard is just waiting to punch them in the head. And, well, I mean, they've been trained to feel that. So, has all of that impacted how people feel about Diablo 4?
Yeah. It's like Blizzard. You can't feel hard done by this because you did invite it all upon yourself. So, Rod Ferguson, I suppose, felt like it was time to make some tweets. So he said, for those of you scoring along at home, this is 3 Diablo games in 3 years. The franchise is back in a big way. We're excited to have, experiences for all kinds of players. Hopefully we'll see you in Sanctuary. To be clear, D4 is a full-price game built for PC, PlayStation, Xbox audiences, fully committed to an incredible breadth of content after launch for years to come, anchored around optional cosmetic items and full story-driven expansions. More details soon. Necromancer blog tomorrow. So, the thing is, we already knew that there would be cosmetic microtransactions in this game. That's something we knew from the BlizzCon. So, nothing new there. It's purely just that people have significantly lost some faith. Also, the idea that this is a full-price game that then has microtransactions in it, right? Now, I suppose from Blizzard's perspective, that is to fund a whole bunch of post-launch development. For me, the question then is going to be, what are we getting in return for those cosmetics? Because if I can't unlock those cosmetics by just playing the game, I feel like I need to get substantial content in return for that over time, because obviously it's not a subscription game, right? Like the idea that, we buy a $60 game or whatever, full price, and it doesn't come with all the shit is like really not cool. Yeah. That fully then means that this is best seen as a live game. So then, if it's being monetized around optional cosmetics and full story-driven expansions, what content do we get in between those full story-driven expansions that justifies the live service business model with the cosmetics? That they haven't really talked about as much, and that's what I really want to know.
And I assume they don't really have super detailed plans in that outside of planning the expansions and maybe planning like classes and stuff like that, but they'll likely market them as expansions. In the same way that like Fallout 76 doesn't do expansions per se, but they don't have like little content drops, they have big ones. And they have a roadmap that's like split up into 4 sections a month or 4 sections a year. That's usually pretty like strong in terms of really strong theming. So that might be what they consider about full story driven expansions. But I think that's the thing where I think they really need to decide what kind of game Diablo 4 is in a world of Lost Ark and a world of Path of Exile, because they're putting a lot of effort into getting the kind of end game stuff set up. But if they're going for story driven expansions, then they're literally making a game for a different kind of player. And it feels like Diablo is in this case where it kind of accidentally, in a way, catered to these endgame players in a big way. But a lot of the game's initial focus was on the experience of the world and the atmosphere. And it's that thing where you can't really have the super experience of the atmosphere and the world and the story at the same time as the super hyper gameplay driven endgame loop. You can, but it feels like they're kind of aiming for different player phenotypes and stuff.
I think when they say story-driven expansions, what they basically mean is adding a new act. So you'll get a few new tile sets, some new dungeons, new boss types, new enemy types, and then in addition to that, probably some extra endgame systems. which is a little bit of what happened because, you know, in Diablo, of course, you've got the way that the Greater Rift ended up going. You've got the Heradric Cube and like a few other like things that they bolted onto that game in its end game sort of cycle. I imagine that's what an expansion is. So I imagine basically like a kind of traditional Diablo expansion. So just a bunch of new content and systems.
Yeah, so then you look at the live service model and you think, well, what is this live service model doing? What are these microtransactions doing? And it's like, as if you put it quite well when you're talking about, you know, the cosmetics used to be content for games. That used to be how it was. And then Horse Armor DLC came in and kind of kicked the bucket over. But it's that idea of you're buying content, but you're kind of buying it the wrong way around. Well, instead of them making content and buying it, you're buying content that should be content, and they're taking that money to make more content. But it's not a direct purchase; it's a limitless purchase, where you don't just buy one, expansion. You buy so many cosmetics, and you've got the whaling potential for cosmetic stuff. Obviously, you don't have the same whaling potential as you would in a loot box filled game or something like Immortal, which is obviously, as we've talked about, quite bad.
Yeah.
But you still have that idea of, if they make an expansion, then they charge you that expansion. It's basically just another boxed product sale, just a bit smaller. And it doesn't have that like kind of massive cap on spending. It's like really tightly capped. So it's the idea of they're trying to just get the expansion model to you, but in a different way.
They want them both.
Which has more possible expenditure by taking away the cosmetic that used to be content.
Yeah. So it basically just means that, so in Diablo, of course, you've got seasons. An expansion will be different to a season. So they want a refreshing store with new cosmetics, all that jazz for every season. I think what this then means is that the players are going to be right to expect seasons that are more development focused. So less of a Diablo 3 season, more of a Path of Exile season.
Yeah.
We see here in this job posting here, manage the virtual product offers of the in-game storefront throughout each season to deliver an exceptional player experience. And look, it's the thing, if this is done badly, people will complain as well. Yeah. Like in Halo Infinite, the store was done badly. People complained that the store was done badly. So you do need somebody to do this job and to do it competently. I think it's just from players, we need to see proof that this somehow could be in our benefit, because when we're looking at it from this position, when we see you buy the game, you buy the expansions and this, we've seen no proof that we're going to benefit from this aspect of the business model. So then it looks like it's done for the shareholders, not for us.
Yeah, well, I mean,
not for the development team.
Like, look at basically everything Blizzard's released.
Yeah.
World of Warcraft, Shadowlands, and World of Warcraft BFA have had substantially more shop items than ever before. The 6-month sub has been ramped up. And we're not seeing any of that returning content. You look over at Hearthstone, they're getting plenty of content, but it's all monetized and cards-wise. And I think they may even not even quite do as much as before in terms of the story front stuff. Sure, they've got the other game modes and stuff, but they're also heavily monetized. You look at Diablo 3, and it's like, they clearly have a skeleton team running that game for a long time. At least so much has felt like that after they kind of finished feature stuff. It's all just the updates aren't there. So the game has been out for so many years, and because Asmongold was running through the like content on it or in Diablo on a stream, and it's like,
3?
Yeah, so it feels like 3 is okay. You go, that's okay, and then you compare it to PoE or you compare it to Lost Ark,
same.
And you're like, what have they been doing? And obviously they've not been actively developing that game, but that's how they treated the last version of this. So the last 2 Diablos we've had were a game that was launched with a real money auction house, fell to pieces in a number of ways, was okay at launch, wasn't super great, then it got a good expansion, and then they got the ass pulled out of it, because they're like, sorry, not making enough money, we don't trust you with this, goodbye, and the players were kind of left going, I guess it's alright, and it's got a little bit of support, and then Immortal's Immortal.
Yeah.
So it's like, I can see why people would have absolutely zero trust, and it's a thing of, it doesn't matter what they show or how good it is, because even I was like, that actually looks, in terms of, it's hard to describe, but like the overall feel of how everything looked, how everything sounded, I was like, that actually looks genuinely like a really fun atmosphere. Yeah. But at the same time, in the back of your head, you're like, yeah, but in what way are you going to pay for this? Because you're not going to pay for the box price. That's not how games work anymore.
Yeah, so I think in the same way that Overwatch 2 has got to have a content cadence that matches or bests Valorant or whatever, this has got to match or best PoE.
Yeah. It's like, I didn't even mention Overwatch there when I was talking about the content availability. I completely forgot, because they made nothing for it. think of all that loot box money. Where did that go? It clearly went into the abyss.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's gone into Overwatch 2, but then that's what the Overwatch box price is supposed to do. Pay for Overwatch and then start paying for Overwatch 2.
I think evidently vast sums of money, vast quantities of time were wasted.
Yeah.
While, of course, the cash was extracted.
And that's the thing. That is quite profoundly Blizzard's fault, not their players' fault. Yet their players, kind of feel the impact of it a lot of the time.
As for the internet reactions.
Yep. Some good.
I mean,
but
take skill up. Like, yeah, I'm down, man. I also really, really liked it. Like, straight up, this game looks awesome to me.
Yeah.
It's just, I want to see there not be bullshit. Now, I think it's highly unrealistic that they're going to put Immortal style cosmetic monetization, yes. Immortal style power monetization, I think no. I think they know that is not acceptable in the PC market. I think it won't happen. What I think is profound and very interesting, though, is that they have totally lost people's trust. So I absolutely think that Diablo 4 will be not a pay-to-win game in the same way that Lost Ark is a pay-to-win game.
Not a chance, because that's not what a Blizzard product is.
Well, what does that even mean anymore?
Exactly, that's the thing. You can kind of have a little bit of, in your head, you can have a little bit of separation between this is a Blizzard product, and this is a Blizzard and NetEase product, and this is a new Blizzard product, and this is a new Blizzard product in an IP, because you've got all these different little bits of who Blizzard are. Because Blizzard's name means so little in World of Warcraft. It means a little bit in Hearthstone. It means nothing in the RTS realm anymore. It means something in Diablo, maybe.
Yeah, they have sullied their name.
Yeah.
Whenever we made the video with, the title was basically like, this has permanently damaged Blizzard's reputation. What we aren't. And I'm sure a bunch of maybe people at Blizzard, certainly that Kotaku writer who just decided to make shit up about us. That was interesting. What do you expect? They're going to maybe think, oh, it's just these angry YouTubers. Very good. No, it's like if what we were saying was totally off base, people wouldn't watch our shit. People are genuinely pissed off because they don't want to see their games full of pay-to-win bullshit. And as the title of that video is very much suggesting, yeah, they have messed up their reputation. It's a situation where me and you, as the people making these videos, we do not think that this game will have pay-to-win elements. We genuinely do not believe that. But equally, we do believe that Blizzard have damaged their reputation so much that what we believe doesn't particularly matter. What they say doesn't particularly matter because we won't trust them anymore. And this is like the one thing that Blizzard has struggled with. They have very much, it seems, felt entitled to their reputation, like it's theirs, like it's a sure thing. When you look into some of those reports about how Immortal actually ended up getting announced, we see that perspective. When you hear about the behavior of some of their staff, you see that perspective. When I hear some of the talk about it being a very hierarchical company, a lot of ego, a lot of top-down stuff, it's like you see all of this constantly, and it's like, man, your name is everything.
Yeah, there are literally multiple millennia-old idioms about what they've been doing. There's the boy who cried wolf in terms of, hey, this game's really good. Hey, this game's really good. Hey, this game's really good. It's from us, we promise. And that's not panned out, or the game's not shown up. There's the other one about poisoning the well, and that's exactly what they've done. They're just like, they've poisoned the well. Why is everyone getting sick? Oh shit, we poisoned the actual well. We destroyed Blizzard as it was. And now everyone's wondering why it tastes the way it does. It's grim.
Yeah, if this was happening in a world where Immortal had, let's just say, the same level as Lost Ark. Yeah. Not ideal, but not ghastly. StarCraft 2 still has development. War 3 Reforged has an active development plan that's being communicated to people. Again, they said more in June. Maybe they should have given us the positive War 3 news before the Diablo news in order to get that initial bit of trust back. It's like there's so many strategic public relations things that they could have done that they didn't, because they generally seem to be pretty bad at PR. And it's kind of weird. I see people who work in Blizzard PR, and they're good people. I just have to assume it's teams not talking to each other. It's not a fantastic sort of top-down, well-coordinated strategy. But at the end of the day, if you had to release Diablo Immortal, and that's just literally your job, what's Ybarra going to do? Not release Diablo Immortal, especially when there's another key stakeholder involved in that project. No, Immortal's got to come out. So what do? They almost have no choice but to release Immortal the way that it is, because seemingly anybody who has a problem with how that thing's monetized has no power to change it.
Yeah.
That's like, well, what, are you going to quit over it? Cool, the next guy's going to ship the game. Right? Like, it's a very strange position, I imagine.
Sure. Yeah.
So continue on with some of the opinions. I mean, Carnage saying, actually, shit looks pretty good. But again, concerns over Immortal bleeding into 4. Oh no, Blizzard, why did you see those concerns by releasing Immortal? From Zach, just not sure about, to really go into the hype. Part of that for him is D3 not really having innovation for a very long time. Immortal being the total clown fiesta that it is. Comparisons to PoE and Lost Ark, which both seemingly going very strong. I mean, PoE, it's like I can definitely say that for. Lost Ark, I obviously, as you guys know, I get the heebie-jeebies over the way that you can just pay for those essential resources. And honestly, as soon as I kind of realized that and it dawned on me while I was working in our second video, I was just like, yeah, no, actually, maybe I just didn't get this and it's not for me. Again, I think just Zach talking about, like, are they going to be daring enough to truly make content for the people who really want that content, or are they going to go so broad it appeals to nobody?
Yeah.
For Zeepla, I think good one, looks good, but it's like finding out the guy that sells dog meat has also got some nice cupcakes. Yeah, Immortal, why'd you do that? I mean, not just Immortal, obviously all the dramas that have happened before that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing about, like, what Asmongold's trying to say specifically, I think, is something that people kind of aren't really so much saying because they haven't really parsed out why, because it's such, like, a deep thing, right? It's that, is there any trust in Blizzard as literally video game developers? Not to say the individual skill of the developers there, but the, like, overall skill of what will come out. Because what has come out and been supported? Nothing, effectively. None of their games have been supported well for a long, long time. There's a Corton that's good, but that's the thing. It doesn't matter if you can, if you can spend 10 years and make a game that's really, really good. The person or the developer who's made the same game in 4 years and then spent 6 years iterating it live, they're going to do a better live service. They're going to have a game that has more player feedback and is better over time. It's like PoE has, like, absolutely shit the bed a couple times, but never to the point where they can't clean it up and then make something new, make something better. That's the thing that these games have kind of... I mean, Lost Ark itself was a complete shit show for a long time in Korea, and then they recovered based on player feedback, based on the data coming in, and went, okay, we can make this good. And Blizzard have no proof of them doing that. So I could see why you'd be skeptical. Blizzard need to prove that they can make a good game and support a good game.
Yeah.
And Diablo 4 is like the first time they're even trying this in a long time. Well, obviously, Overwatch 2, PvP, Early Access, Endless Beta, Nightmare Mode is going to be, the first trial of that in a long time. But it is fundamentally just, how are you going to beat these? How are you going to beat these developers that have proven to be better than you? You're now almost... the underdog has a positive connotation to it, right? But they're almost the underdog. They're now the challenger to the throne,
Blizzard
to
are totally the
belts.
underdog. Like, they have the money, they have the resources, but... the PoE devs have just been getting their reps in.
Yeah.
Their season, like the pace of their seasons is crazy.
Yeah, how do you
the
beat
amount of experiments that they have done. Like they've been able to commit proper resources to a proper gameplay experiment and learn from that.
Yeah.
Whereas in D3 they haven't. And then D4 does not seem to be inheriting a humongous amount from D3, which, I mean, I do like.
Yep.
It looks like it'll be a more novel game experience. So ultimately, where we are essentially left with this video is... from my opinion, D4 looks like it has the potential to be a truly fantastic game.
It does.
And more than anything, that calls into stark focus how Blizzard, with Immortal, lost the faith of that audience in the same way that they've really had to climb back with World of Warcraft. Because they've, with BFA and Shadowlands had major missteps. They now also have to do that with Diablo. I think people were already a little bit skeptical given that they, announced Immortal in the way that they did. But I think they were kind of winning people back a little bit with the quarterly updates that they have been quite diligently posting for Diablo 4. So I think that once more, in the same way that apparently some people had to learn lessons from the reveal of Immortal, perhaps also some lessons are going to be learned. And perhaps the fear that Immortal could truly damage 4 will make them realize a little bit more what they've done.
Yeah, because I think, to be quite frank about it, the idea that, You know, I mean, I imagine there were pushback internally. We never hear about any pushback internally because that's all within the company. But I imagine whenever they're talking about the Diablo franchise, there's someone at the table going, "Do you know how much damage Immortal's going to do to that franchise's value?
Yeah.
Not monetary value in terms of revenue, but to like, we will no longer be able to go up and say this is Diablo, motherfuckers, and have people listen. They'll go, oh, Diablo, oh yeah, I played one of those, or I guess the worst case, oh yeah, my cousin who's had problems with gambling played that game and look where that's left him. That's like the worst case, and I'm sure there's people talking about that and weighing it up, but it's brutal that they've dug their own grave in this front.
Yeah, and they have to understand that a small amount of negative stories will get outsized media attention. Right?
Really?
Like, you are the incumbent, you are the heavyweight, everything else is jiu-jitsu, your weight will be used against you. That's what you have to realize when you're like a big AAA company. You've got to like radically understand that. And I think it's crazy that so many companies do not radically understand the position that they're actually in. Where everyone else around them, the media, etc., is so much more agile and nimble. I mean, we can turn around a video in barely any time. You go to a Kotaku or a Eurogamer or whatever, I mean, they're doing a 400, 500 word article.
400, because that's within SEO limits. Yeah.
There you go. I mean, they can bang those out in no time. Like the media apparatus, the way that Twitter is, all these things are so much faster than these companies are seemingly built to deal with, and they have got to get real and get into the modern world, or else they're going to continue losing their own story, and I think that's continually been the story of Blizzard. They have lost their own narrative. Yeah. Let's hope they can get it back. I think that Rod Ferguson had to do some tweets being like, oh no, this is a full price, like this is a, he basically almost tweeted, don't worry, this is a real game.
Yeah, and I mean, that is basically what he tweeted, but translated to the PR machine, so.
Yeah. Right, we will see. Let me know what you're thinking about 4, and what are the sorts of assurances that you would need for you to actually be interested in 4, and what sorts of things, like, do you think that Immortal could be changed in a way that would make you comfortable with the idea of playing it? I know it's a bit of a big ask. Well, try to parse it through. We'll see you next time.